I'd rather create something that others criticise than create nothing and criticise others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospopreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson. Brand ambassador and founder of Westwinds, Jez Spencer, opens conversation today on a huge range of topics. Everything from gin, provenance, craft beer, and mental health, and a lesson that everyone needs to know.
Hello and welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Good morning, mate. Please call me Jez, unless you're wearing a police uniform or you're my father. Monosyllabic terms are fine with me, mate. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic, Jez, it is. Jez, I like to start the show by asking if you have a crazy hospitality story.
Oh, who doesn't? I used to pride myself as a young bartender working in a very busy, fast-paced bar in Fremantle Metropolis. For those that know, don't judge me. As been a hard-working, very fast bartender in a very competitive little market down there. So it came as a surprise one night when I got asked to go home. It turns out I'd accidentally taken a microdot. For those that don't know, you can Google that. And thought I was doing a wonderful job at work. However, upon being asked to go home early, I said, why? I said, because you're hiding in the bin recess, mate, and you've got a tea towel on your head. Anyway, nevertheless, I got sent home early that night. It was a little crazy. It was a good night.
That is definitely a crazy story.
So don't take acid at work, kids.
Yes, don't do it. Thank you for that story, Jez. The next question that I like to delve into is by going macro really quickly. Why do you do what you do?
Because I love it. Because I'm passionate about it. Because it involves people, understanding people. I think one of the unique things about hospitality is being able to observe punters' behaviour at the point of purchase without sounding like a marketing wanker. We get to see people, see how they behave, what makes them tick, why do they do what they do. Some of the things we'll never understand, like pulling dunny seats out of dunnies when on the cans. But no, it's just such a unique industry that we get direct feedback, and short of working with children, i.e. orphans, I think it's a one-off industry. So yeah, I love it.
It is about that. I'm glad that you brought up this idea that we're observing human behaviour, because that's something that really draws me to the industry as well, is understanding how and why people do what they do. It's more about people rather than just the industry. It's a lot bigger than that. I'm incredibly passionate about that, and I hope that comes out a little bit throughout the episode when I go back to big picture again. But before we do, I just want you to tell guests just a little bit about what you do.
Look, I'm the son of a fisherman. I'm colourblind, so therefore I could never go to sea and follow my father's footsteps. I got really bored at commerce, and I enjoy people and watching people and over-delivering products and experiences to people. So to me, hospitality was natural. Like I said, at 45, I think back in the day, the sort of early 90s, there wasn't a lot of good service outside of fine dining restaurants. There weren't a lot of good drinks, and I just wanted to make people's experiences better. You've got to think that when people spend money over the bar or on a restaurant table, cafe, be it wherever, it's an investment. They're investing their profits from the week into you. So they have every right to expect a certain level and a certain amount. And if we can over-deliver that, then I think surely that gives us a greater sense of being. I'm not going to solve the problems as to why we're here as humanity, but I think, hell, we're here, so we might as well make it better for ourselves, for everyone else.
So how do you suppose we go about doing that, solving that problem?
Choose an area that you're good at and go as hard as you can. I think Lindsay Fox once said there are two types of people in the world: those that bite off as much as they can chew, and those that bite off more than they can chew, but chew like fuck. So have a go at it. Get up that half hour earlier. Stay awake that half hour later. Give it everything you've got. And whether that's washing dishes, general manager of a hotel, a brand manager, this whole fucking 9 to 5, 38-hour week is just a misnomer. I mean, really, we have come from caves, and the mammoths never gave us a 38-hour week, or the cave bears and shit never gave us a break at 38 hours. So there's nothing to say, make that extra effort, go that extra mile, work that extra little bit, and try and understand who you're doing it for. And if you can put yourselves in their shoes, then you're a long way to understanding what they want, what they need, and then exceeding those expectations.
So obviously in your role, Jez, there's a sales component. So I'd like to delve a little bit into this concept of sales and the brand ambassador and how you feel like those roles operate at the moment, and maybe how they can step up, how they can level up or grow.
Look, I guess It's a really good point. I think I'm going to upset one or two of my good friends here who may or may not be ambassadors and a couple who are sales. I don't see it as sales. Venues are going to purchase stock. So if you align yourself with a brand of premium or something that's going to work for the customers, then it's not really sales. You're providing solutions. That may come across as a bit of a spin on it, but they're going to purchase something anyway. So if you're providing a solution, i.e. a solid product that customers are going to buy at the right price with the amount of sales support behind it, then are you really selling? And to link that in with ambassadors, I think the ambassador term is changing, and I think it'll need to change more and more as we become more accountable, as businesses look to shave that little extra margin off or add a little fat to their margins. Everyone else has to pick up the slack, and I think unfortunately with some of the ambassadorial work nowadays, as important as it is, and when it's good, it's great. It's absolutely tip-top. But I think big companies are looking at it more and more. You look at all the big spirit and beer companies at the moment, they're all facing cutbacks. So how are you as an ambassador going to deliver that little bit of extra value? And that might be taking an order, helping the sales, or just delving down into your bag of tricks and offering that little bit of special beyond expectation sort of stuff. Is that not just building the brand, but making sure that business has a sustainable position for you?
I want to jump into sales more deeply. So you brought up there that it's not sales, but it is sales, and then using sales in the description of what you gave us there. What is sales to you?
Sales to me is understanding what your customers need and supplying a solution. Is it a product that presents the correct margin at the correct price? Is it supported effectively? A lot of people look to sell a box and move on. That's commodity trading in my mind. Sales to me is building a solid relationship, and I think relationship is the absolute epicenter of everything we do. I certainly think it's how I've managed to succeed in looking after people, understanding, is it the correct product fit, brand fit? Is it a profile that fits the profile of the venue? And as I said, is it priced correctly? Will they make money from it? And if they make money from it, you're going to have a long-term relationship. And ensuring that it's a win-win situation, that everyone's winning here and you will get that call back. I've become really good mates with a lot of my customers who now I wouldn't use the C word with them. Sorry, customers is my other C word. It's a silent N. Yeah, I think it's just about understanding who they are, what they need, supplying that solution, and following up and doing what you said you'd do.
So this relationship-based sales. Relationship-based sales have been operating for, or that term and the concept has been operating for a long time. And then it became solution-based selling, which I don't believe I've explicitly said on the show, but I worked for a large tech company that did exactly that, and before everyone else was doing it. So that's where I learned about it and saw it come through elsewhere. So it's really interesting to see these trends in sales take place too. But I want to ask you about what the future is for sales and brand ambassadors.
Look, for me, it's not, I wouldn't say so much sales as brand building. I think there's two components, certainly in the booze industry, to look at it. I look to seed a brand in the on-premise. You lower your margins and you build it in terms, or hand in hand with your brand ambassadors, and then you will drive numbers which sustains your business model through the off-premise. And that may be a 5-year turnaround using the Pareto principle of 80-20. Starts at 20, it goes to 80, and you flip it back and forth. Where do I see it going? I think there'll be a greater morph between the two. I think more salespeople will be required to step up and do ambassadorial work, and vice versa. The ambassadors might not like that, and the sales guys might not like that. But in an age and a day where we're looking to cut everything back, we're looking at every single margin from logistics, warehousing, people are still going to come under the hammer there, and they're going to look to cut numbers back. So unless you're diversifying your talents, multi-skilling, and not killing yourself by doing 400 sales calls a month, then you really need to have a greater understanding of not just your customers and your product, but knowing where industry trends are going. How are you delivering educated opinions to your customers as well, rather than just going, mate, here's your box, here's your t-shirts, here's your training session. It's consultative approach as well. It's a consultative approach as well. I think, assisting to build that business. And you talk about sales relationships versus solutions. They're both age-old principles, and I think, you could go back to caveman days. Are you looking to buy sheep or are you looking to buy cattle? Just because you've got a good relationship there, I think you still need to understand what those solutions are. Your mates will only buy something off you for so long if they don't need it. So you've got to understand what are the needs of the business and the customers, and helping work with them. So it's about understanding other people, their businesses and their needs.
Jez, tell us a bit more about the video series that you're building at the moment.
Oh, the Carpool Calderero. Calderero is Spanish for Boilermaker. A good buddy of mine, Jason Pitt, and I sort of got a little frustrated. Late last year, we'd buried 4 people from hospitality, and we felt that was 4 more than we really wanted to or needed to. Unfortunately, there's been a couple more since then as well, to which my hearts go out to the families and stuff. And it's not good that we're seeing all these young hospitality people taking their own lives in their hands. And you've got to, again, go back to what you said previously and say, why? So it's the stress, it's the expectations, and certainly in the digital age of social media and the interwebs, you know, seeing what your peers are doing. Am I good enough as a chef? Am I in the right place as a waiter? Are my drinks okay for the next cocktail competition? Because everyone's judging on me and there's a series of likes, and if I'm not getting the likes. So there's a lot of pressure on people. So to, I guess, alleviate that, Jason and I had a little phrase that we've used, and God bless him, he's a cracking fellow who I use as a bit of a moral barometer. But we said, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved. If these people just spoke to their mates a little more, I'm not saying the problems will go away, and the depression, anxiety, and all sorts of other evils and the voices, you know, we all get them from time to time. I think it's good if you could just talk to somebody about it, just let some of that steam off a little bit. Surely that would have to have a reduction in those numbers. And we figured if 2 of the old, salty, knockabout clowns of the industry that have been around for a while, if we can sort of put our hands up and share a little bit and get other people to share and encourage people to talk, then surely that's got to bring take a little bit of the pressure off. I mean, we're not professionals, we don't have doctorates. If you are in trouble, then Jason and I probably know a couple of people through personal experiences that can help you, but it's just about talking to your friends. You know, so we thought if we got some industry identities into the car, got them to share some stories, a little bit of prompting from us, and it's organically grown, and we've grown up over the 12 installments. Look, it's really good, and we're getting strangers come up to us, thanking us, congratulating, which we haven't done it for that, but I think it's sending a good message to people going, talk to your friends. Not just you letting your pressures off, but if you see that person that's gone quiet, or you haven't seen them for a while, or maybe you've seen some cyberbullying, God forbid, or whatever else, reach out to them and just say, are you okay? And there's a lot of movements like that now, and I think in hospitality, we still have that old, come on mate, soldier on, you'll be all right, chin up, you can do another shift. Well, clearly we can't as a society. 1 in 5 suffering from some form of mental stress. So yeah, just reach out there and keep an eye on your mates.
So how are you guys, just for anyone who hasn't seen, can you tell us a little bit about what actually happens on the show?
Yeah, look, it's a light-hearted piss take of some other media sort of themes that we've seen. We've seen karaoke, carpool karaoke, which has a good laugh and a good following. And we just thought, you know what, we'll just grab a couple of mates. We'll start with one. As we've developed, they now hand the baton on, because it's not about Jez and Jez and the Little Dick show. Well, not the Little Show or the Little Dicks, but you know what I mean. It's more so just getting hospitality people to talk. You know, we can all talk with a mouthful and a noseful, but I think on an afternoon or a morning when times are a little darker, it's about talking to one another. And, you know, I think our greatest band-aid in our industry is, let's go for a beer. Let's have a shot. Let's go and smash a few drinks. And unfortunately, alcohol makes you tired, makes you a bit more ratty, and it just masks the problem until the next shift, and then you make more strange decisions that you wouldn't normally make, and it keeps compounding. And trust me, I'm at the top of the pyramid for stupidity and masking things with booze. So that's why I think we've put our hands up to say, hey, it's okay to talk to your friends.
Do you want to tell listeners much about how your experience has been with maybe mental health or alcohol abuse or those sorts of things?
Yeah, I come from a long line of alcoholics, and it runs deep, and most people will know well in my family. I guess I don't shy away from any of that. I've had a couple of big blowouts on it, and it's not the answer. Clearly it's an addictive personality, and there's other addictions that run alongside that, so you always have to be careful with it. But I'm pretty open and upfront with those that know me, saying it's okay to talk about it, because it's not going to go anywhere. I think it's really important I don't see personally pharmaceuticals as the answer. A lot of people prescribe stuff. I've had a stint on those and really didn't enjoy it. So it's about trying to find the balance, and it sounds a little sort of altruistic, and it sounds like something your parents would say, but eat well, sleep well, exercise. It's a really strange combination that really works really effectively, and it's so simple, and most of it doesn't cost much either.
Just the fundamentals, back to basics.
Man, just remembering that balance. Balance is a B word, not a C word.
Jez, I'd like to ask you a little bit about a brand that you're known very well for, little bit about West Winds. Can you tell us a bit about the story of the brand, even building it? This is obviously quite a long story. I want to try to give listeners an understanding of your experience in building that brand, and then how your relationship with the brand maybe came to an end.
I've been in the spirits industry for quite a while. I've enjoyed watching the great trend of premiumisation, people trading up. I mean, you're a Queenslander, and I remember going into Queensland presenting premium rums and people going, what are you talking about, mate? It's not the White Bear. And you'd go back 3 months later and they sort of gave you half an ear, and then 6 months later. So we saw these, even the bastions of old world thinking, premiumisation. I watched tequila come through and work with a couple of products that I was very lucky to work with, some of the rum and tequila. And a mate of mine from cricket, James, came to me and we had a bit of a catch-up, and it was a Colombo-esque meeting. He was in a trench coat, it was a yellow manila folder, and he had this idea bubbling away that he wanted to make limoncello because he had a mate with a still. And I looked at him and I said, get fucked. And he said, but I really want to make gin as well. And I said, well, you know what? There aren't that many premium gins, and this is 8 or 9 years ago. And I can certainly see it going a long way, and I love drinking gin, and you know, I should be 6'4", so clearly my mum drank a lot of gin during the pregnancy. My father's 6'5", and there's a lot of tall people in there, and me at sort of 5'11", 5'10 and a half on a wet day. You know, I saw some really good opportunity, and to me the opportunity wasn't about making $1 million. It was a really exciting chance to say, hey, why are we watching craft spirits rise in the States and we're not doing it here? There were guys like, shout outs to Great Southern Distillery in Western Australia, Bill Lark down in Tasmania, and a couple of other stalwarts, guys out of Bathurst, Stone Pine, but there wasn't a lot going on, and there certainly wasn't a lot going on in the gin space, and nobody had actually set out to make a gin. I sort of looked around and said, well, I don't really like making a drink without Jason Chan checking it. He's my liquid barometer, as you will. I wouldn't cook or drink anything without the man. So I said to him, I said, mate, what does this look like? He said, right, let's do this. And for us, it was a good chance to be creative. God, if Jason isn't creative, he's terrorising people. Not as bad as me. But for us, it was a chance to showcase, what does Australia taste like? Jason and I both travelled a lot. He's Kiwanese, he's half Hong Kong, half New Zealand, but he's settled well here now. And we wanted people to try a little taste of Australia all the way around the world, in the great man's words. New York, Berlin, London, why can't you taste Australia there? And if you walked through duty free, it was quite embarrassing. There was some just big name, generic wine brands. Obviously the duty on beer is a lot less, so you couldn't get any beers. So we were known for Foster's overseas, and the big name wine brands, you know, like the 2 platypus fucking, or the 2 singing koalas, or, you know, the dancing, the dancing galah. And it was pretty cringeworthy sort of stuff. So to us, we wanted to show the world that, okay, this is what Australia tastes like, but we want to be contemporary. But we also realised that we'd have to build a category out here, and that was scary. You know, you'd look around at people and say, hey, mate, you know, it's me again. Can I come and talk to you about gin? And they'd go, when did you join the gym? I said, no, it's my West Australian speech impediment. I actually said gin as in gin and tonic, right? Oh, right, gin, right. You mean the old depressed grandmother's drink? Yeah, exactly. So we knew we had some barriers to entry. We knew we had to do some education. We had some really fun sort of ideas at the start. We came from Western Australia. We decided to use Margaret River as the water source because it was the cleanest rainwater we found on the continent. You've got to think the clouds come all the way across the Indian Ocean. There's nothing but a couple of naughty French cray fishermen out there in the middle of nowhere, and a missing plane nowadays, but we'd taken the water before then. So we built our little brand, the West Winds. We had a lot of fun with it. We used education as a big thing. We had a thing called Ginstitution where we taught people what is gin and demystified it. And, you know, 2018 we sort of laugh at it, and it's a bit of a, you know, it's a bit embarrassing. But back then when we started, men couldn't tell other men that they drank gin. It just wasn't the done thing. And I was working in a bar that I owned, and I realised when a couple of footballers came in and they ordered gin and tonics, a light bulb went off and said, we've turned a corner here. It's not, maybe it's a greater social awakening, or maybe people are just getting their head around that gin's bloody good after 8 pots of beer. You want the little wedge, and we kind of stole that space that you know, the Canadian clubs of the world had previously occupied. So look, it was a big journey. It was a great journey. We won a couple of double golds at San Fran, which those that know is a big thing.
The Brookies have just won.
Yeah. And I think shout out to Archie Rose as well. Their distillers won one. I didn't go through the awards anymore. But look, you know, it's great to see those little brands come up and about. And I think the beauty there is you've got 2 gins. I mean, 4 Pillars won a couple. You've got gins from all over the country. And the beautiful thing with our gin was, or which we felt in general, was you can make gin that tastes so different to each other one. So when you ask about industry trends, I look at provenance as being a major influence there. So you've got a Cape Byron gin versus a a Sydney gin versus a Yarra Valley gin versus, and I shouldn't say versus because we're all on a very small pot over here. We'd like to think we work together, versus a Margaret River gin. It's all going to be completely different, and that's the beauty of provenance. And I think the clear landscape that gin allowed us to do stuff. If you took flavoured vodka, i.e. with a little bit of juniper in it, you had gin. Did it taste good? Probably not. But what else could you put in there to highlight Australian indigenous ingredients? I mean, we've been here for 230 odd years, making a mess of the place, but traditional inhabitants have been here 40,000 years, and we've only just started to tap into what they've been using for thousands of years, which is in hindsight embarrassing, but in foresight looking forward, let's just embrace it and look forward and see what else we can take out of this great land to do. Jason and I no longer work with West Winds. Things have changed a little bit there. Is it still a great gin? It's still consistently made. Our one of our dear friends, Rummy's still the head distiller there to ensure that everything's consistent. I think consistency is the one thing that I say to small producers. Consistency in flavour and consistency in supply chain would be the two bits of advice I'd offer anyone, and that's just coming from the market. What are we doing going forward? Jez has got some projects that he's working on at his bar. I'm working with a little brewery out of Port Melbourne and Margaret River, which is quite exciting. I really like being back in the beer space, called Colonial Brewery. I've got some great guys that I work with there. Jason and I have worked with them before. Their brewery in Margaret River is right near our distillery, and the brewery here in Port Melbourne's near Jason's bar. So we'd made a couple of beers with them. We get along really well with them. So when they asked me to come and work with them, it was a no-brainer. A great group of guys that I've loved for a long time, and they've got Ash Hazel, one of the great brewers in Australia now, working there. So to me, great beer, great brand, consistent, and from a commercial side, it's well priced, and there's lots of it. So it's fun. It's watching another brand develop, which I really like.
What's your relationship with West Winds now?
Oh, look, you'll always love your child, even when you move out of home or they move out of home. I've still got a vested interest in it. No, I haven't cashed out. Otherwise, I'd probably be lying on a beach in Puerto Rico or Palawan in the Philippines. So, I sit back and just watch the little baby grow, and it's gone from strength to strength, and I'm sure they'll have some new releases coming out soon enough. So, hats off to them, and it's encouraging to watch.
Jez, I'd like to ask you, what are you learning about or exploring right now?
I'm enjoying watching the beer space. I think we're constantly morphing as consumers. Whilst we do mimic the States, I think, in terms of craft production, be that beer or spirits, we have our own cheeky, irreverent identity as a nation, and that has a flow-on effect through our consumption. Beers, I think, are certainly evolving at a rate of knots. We're watching some wonderful beers come through at the moment. I like the rise of the sour beer, which has taken away some of the traditional tones, be that the malt and the hop so much, and allowing more citrus notes, which sounds a bit beer bukkake, but for me what it does is brings more non-traditional beer drinkers into the sphere. I'm watching a lot of younger drinkers come into the space, and I think that's really encouraging, getting them off the vodka, lime and sodas or the dirty premixes and watching them enjoy beers. And hopefully these will provide a bit of a gateway into some of the bigger, greater beers. But I'm also seeing the rise of consistent, well-produced lagers. People want to be able to drink 8 beers in the sun, don't drive children, be that at an event or in a backyard, and I don't think some of the bigger beers allow that. The bigger beers are interesting, they're exploratory, and they're to be commended by those brewers. But I think at the end of the day, bar operators and bar managers and drinkers, those that want to drink 8 of them, it certainly makes a lot more financial and physical sense.
So the topic of beer has come up a few times on the show with people like Mitch Pickford and Matt Kierkegaard. And the sorts of things that I wanted to ask, and that I've asked them, and I'd like to ask you is, what's your perspective on the idea of generating a different type of beer, or people try to develop one category and then just brand it as a new category with a slightly different spin. Is it that previous category? Is it the new category? What's your perspective on building a new beer category?
Oh, look, it depends where you sit. I mean, I always wear a good deal of marketing hat as well. I think it's not the devil, it is the dark arts, but I think it's important that people hear about your beer. There's no point making the best beer in the country or the world if no one can find it or hear about it. Creating new categories for the sake of new categories, get in the bin. I think creating a new category in order for customers to understand where it sits in the flavour offering spectrum, fantastic. Will these categories be around forever? Not necessarily. And does it give brands and businesses something to talk about? I.e., let's go back to the market and talk about our New England IPA or our black IPA or our sour or whatever that be. I think certainly that gives us something to do, because no one wants to hear the tired old story. Brands are struggling each day to invent, recreate, recalibrate a message to get it out in order to get some headlines or even just some column inches. I think new categories, if they're done right and they provide a reason, i.e. explaining where it all sits on the flavour spectrum, then I say, good on you. I think it's great, and it just allows us to build lists, tap lists, be that shelving, whatever that be. And think about it, go back to wine, who are years ahead of us in certain elements. We know where to look on the wine list if we feel like a Pinot. But what about 15, 20 years ago when you wanted a Malbec? Did it sit in the Malbec section or did it sit in the New World section? And once Malbec became big enough, then it had its own section to a certain degree. So I think categories, nothing wrong with it. Just don't make up shit for the sake of it.
What innovations or innovative techniques have you seen in the industry?
Look, I like, and this is me at my age, what I've seen over the years, the comeback of cans is extraordinary. I think we saw a lot of it in Sydney years ago with the shit tinny, but to me it's a great idea. There's an emotional connection. My father drank tinnies, but I think it preserves your beer. Obviously, beer's worst enemies are sunlight and time. It's a lot safer. It's a lot more sustainable. It makes a lot more sense. So putting stuff in cans, absolute at the forefront of what we're doing. The growler idea from years ago, I thought was a great idea. I thought that really had some a lot of legs. Serving suggestions, like how are we serving it? What are we serving it with? I don't stick to any real hard and fast rules as far as matching goes. If you're having a great meal with a beautiful man or a woman or the like, and you feel like a Shiraz and you're eating barramundi, then I say go nuts. To Joe consumer out there, I think it's really good that gives them an idea, I should have some cheese with this, maybe it's a good idea. And if that gets them thinking a little bit more about what their flavour perception is, then let's keep doing that and challenging people's perceptions.
And stepping beyond beer, what about some industry trends that you've seen? Macro-wide, big, much bigger than beer. What about hospitality trends? You've worked in the industry longer than a lot of guests of mine. What have you seen happen?
I think consolidation would be a big word. Provenance isn't going anywhere. I mean, people say it's a trend. I think it's just part of your story. Look at wine lists. People still want to know who's making it, where's it being made, etc. What are the techniques? Why am I spending my $35 on this? I like the organic wines. I like where that's going. I think we can learn a lot from it. Are they the be-all and end-all? Certainly not. From a venue perspective, I think we are time poor, increasingly more and more. So you will see more people eating more casual style of dining. Is it the death of fine dining? No, there'll always be a place for that. But I think it allows so many more options. If you and I are having a main course together, then someone else isn't going to join us. They'll wait for our meal to finish. But if we're having a couple of share plates, of course, it opens it up. It helps social dynamics there. The spending's a lot easier because you know what you're getting and you can add on at any stage and you can add more people to it. So the venue's going to make more money. They're not going to lose revenue. So I think there's a lot in that. And further to that, we'll talk about the elephant in the room, Uber Eats. I mean, personally, I've used it once. I think it's a terrible concept, and that's just me personally. Those of you that order Uber Eats 3 times a week at home, power to you. I think it's great.
For listeners as well, Jez isn't specifically referring to Uber Eats, but rather like delivery services. Yeah, so like your Fedoras and et cetera, and Deliveroo and whatnot.
Sorry, I should have clarified that. I think Uber Eats will probably go into Oxford Dictionary at some stage, but just as a blanket, home delivered food. To me, going to have my favourite burger, going to have a schnitzel, going to have a kingfish, ceviche, whatever it is, there's a certain magic in being served that, the ambience, seeing people that I know, and really enjoying that value for money of what that is, and that is an experience. Sitting in my lounge room, I think, not so much, it's not my thing, and then what concerns me is these delivery services with a all care, no responsibility factor. The venues, if I get a bad burger at home, it's the venue's fault, not the 45 minutes that it sat in a hot box. And would I go to the venue because I had a soggy, rubbishy burger? As Joe consumer, probably not. And the venue sat there and said, yeah, but if you sat at the bar, this could have been the greatest burger you've had this week, if not this year. So look, I'm pretty fierce about that sort of stuff. It's not going anywhere, so obviously I'm just a cantankerous old man at 45 who just has to get off his ass and go down to his favourite burger bar, which is Hats and Tats. I still think that's up there with the best burgers around.
In Melbourne,
yeah. Jimmy from Easy's might challenge me on that, and he's the burger lord, but I still think pound for pound it's a great burger. Would I get it home delivered? Geez, I'd have to be so hungover to get that sent over. They're my views on it. Is it going anywhere though? No. And what will that mean? What are the next steps? Well, obviously driverless cars, driverless trucks, and that produces a whole load of economic imbalances as well. So,
if people are wanting to eat at home, maybe their patronage is going to drop. In Melbourne, it's much better than where I'm from in Brisbane. People go out every day of the week here. We're in Melbourne at the moment. And I just find it's dramatically different. But are less people going to be going out if they can just deliver it to home? And what happens when venues aren't as, their meals aren't as appreciated? Maybe people get some delivery service and they don't eat out at the venue.
Look, I think there's a couple of different answers to that, definitely. You've got to ask yourself, the people that are ordering a burger from their favourite burger joint at home, what would they do otherwise? Would they go to that bar to get the burger? Because they're probably not drinking at home. I see that as a lot of Tuesday, Wednesday night behaviour, and that might be they've saved on cooking, they don't have to buy a TV dinner. So we've got to say, where is that consumption pool coming from, taking from, etc.? What else does it mean to the venues? Look, I think it'll enforce some recalibration of offering for some venues. They'll have to tidy up their offering. I think it'll mean the end to some businesses, unfortunately. You see the rise of ghost kitchens, which I haven't got my head around yet as to what that impact means to the general trade. But I think we're humans. We want to go out. We want to see people. We want the bartender to engage with us and tell us the sports score and ask how the Tigers went on the weekend, or look at that pretty girl or guy, or play pool. It'll mean a certain drop in revenue, but we will still go out. We are behaviourally structured that we will still go to our favourite watering holes, and we will continue, as a general rule, to do this. Will we eat as much when we're out? Maybe not, because we've had a burger during the week from the place, but that gives us more money to spend on beverage, and sooner or later we're going to need to eat anyway.
Let's pretend that it's really far in the future and virtual reality is prevalent in society. Big thing. Everyone's got some sort of VR headset. Why would they want to go out?
Because you're engaging one of the key senses, which is visual, and the other one, which is hearing. Both of mine, which are diminishing at my age, but you want to be able to smell, you want to be able to taste, you want to be able to feel. You're only dealing in 2 true senses there. As humans, we rely on 5, and if you're of certain religious or ethical backgrounds, and there are a couple of other senses involved as well, I'm not that deep a thinker.
That's excellent. I totally agree with you, and I think that even though these innovations are taking place, it can't ever replace the level of service that's being provided. I think that the caliber is just going to increase to compete with the fact that these 2 senses are being engaged. So smell, taste, touch, they're going to be very, very important. What's your creative process? How do you make your ideas a reality? Maybe thinking about how you generated your ideas with West Winds, or what you're doing now, or maybe how you design a menu or a drink, or how do you, or even the layout of a venue. How do you go about doing that?
Functionality's got to be at the forefront. If the bottle doesn't fit, if the bar's in the wrong position, then you're really setting yourself up for failure there. Generally, if I'm creating something, Jason's going to be nearby and we're going to be bouncing ideas, and he leads a lot of that charge. I like the creativity, certainly with branding. I like the story, but it's got to have a reality to it. So West Winds was for us about bringing the winds that brought the sailors from the old world to the new. I lived in Indonesia for a period of time as a child. The Spice Islands, where we got a lot of the great spices that go into gins, traditionally speaking. The story, it needs to have some legitimacy from it. I mean, we just didn't sit there and make up a story. It was something that felt so important to us. James's father was a sailor as well. Jason had all these ideas about old world versus new world, hence the 2 different gins. So it was really important for us we kind of panel beated the ideas, the thoughts, the emotions that we had lying around, and it came together. But there has to be a legitimacy in the story. So if you're inventing a brand, it's got to have that. As far as venues, look at challenging the system, challenging the norm, but not going so far out there that people go, oh, I didn't feel right there.
Where is that line? Where's too far?
I think the greatest gift in our industry is to be able to put yourself in the shoes of the consumer. And if you can do that, then you're a long way towards understanding that. Look, we've pushed the boundaries with a bunch of different things. You've seen Gordon Ramsay, you've seen Heston Blumenthal push the boundaries. Is it something that you go to every day? No. Is it something that's made other people inspired to do certain things? Yes. Where do those boundaries lie? I don't know. Let's just keep watching people push them and then pull them back when they get to the edge and say, mate, that's a cliff. I think as long as we're engaging in human principles, though, going back to those 5 senses and engaging large levels of service, the product value for money has to be there as well. And whether that's you making a product or a venue, I think that's really important that we stick to those basic principles, because that's what's going to give you a regular clientele, and that's your bread and butter, that's your foundations. And from then, we can sort of add another layer to the house and do some real experimental, wacky shit. But let's look after some of our foundations.
What happens when those foundations change? When people are wanting fundamentally different things? How do we change those foundations without pulling the rug out?
Look, I think to answer that, will the foundations ever really change? No. And we see it now, people going back to that front bar of the pub. That will always remain. I think there'll always be a front bar, there'll always be a certain expectation of those base restaurants, but that allows the others and the pioneers to really push the boundaries and take crossover trends that might be collaborative efforts, which is a big sort of thing, one of the other C words at the moment, cross-pollinating, so, different experiences from different menu types and different nationalities, crossbreeding those. But I think we'll always have those bases. People will always want to go to the front bar. People will always want to go to a certain style, the bistro.
So if someone wants to do what you do, what advice do you have for them?
There's a couple of key things. I always say, one of the key things is dream big, get shit done, have fun. Back yourself, do your homework. Don't be too much of an asshole. Trust me, it doesn't work. But really, make sure you're offering something that people will want. Make sure it's interesting. Make sure it's a different offering. There's a bird running around here. What is this, a little parrot?
Does it look like this parrot?
Make sure you understand who your market is. Make sure you're not just making something for the sake of making it. If you are going to do something like that, then be prepared to build a whole new category and do it. And that could be a challenge, and you really need to have some good homework behind you, some market intel, and a shit ton of money. Get your product together, get your business plan together. I mean, business plans sound terrible, but it's a great Bible and a sort of lightning rod that you can always go back to. Sort of, if you're not sure, go back to the business plan.
In the business world now, I mean, and I'm not talking about these corporations because they're still very archaic in the way that they do things. But on the ground floor with startups and in the entrepreneurial world, people aren't using business plans. They're using one piece of paper that's got everything you need on it. It's not a 52-page document for 40 or however many pages it's usually got. It's just a vision ultimately and a strategy around that vision. But it's very, very fleshed out on one side of an A4 piece of paper, and it's incredible.
Look, I think that's great. And I think, we constantly have to challenge age-old theories and mindsets. It depends who you're pitching it to. If you're doing a low-end pitch, then that's fine. If you're going to ask someone for $7 million, I guarantee you they want 52 pages, regardless of your sort of visions of your company culture, walking around in your boxer shorts with thongs on, smoking joints with sunglasses on and with your feet in a paddling pool, because this is how creatives do it. Trust me, I'm a creative. But sooner or later, the bank manager wants to know some serious answers. And if you want to grow your business, you're going to need some serious bucks in there. And you're going to have to put that together at some stage. I'm not saying put your suit on and go to work each day, because somebody famously said to me once, mate, if you can get your work done in a bathrobe, sitting on the balcony, then do it. Just make sure you do it, you keep it professional, and you deliver what's expected of you. And I love that. I love the fact that we don't have to wear the suits anymore. But when we engage the suits, again, it goes back to anything, part of the sell. The solution is understanding who are they, what do they want, what do we want to get from that relationship, okay, and how do we get that message across to them. Because if you present them a really nice slide with a couple of pictures and a flow chart and some conceptual sort of stuff, they're going to throw you out the door, because there's another 60 guys behind them waiting to pitch their picture, and you've only got your 7-minute window. So you've got to get your shit together. And if that's not your skill set, play to your skill set and engage someone else. 7% of nothing is still nothing. Always remember the percentages. Be happy to dial down on some of your equity, I think, and get the right people involved, so you're not lying awake at night trying to do a spreadsheet if you're a super creative and that's not your forte. Don't give away all your equity, because that's one of the first great business lessons, but don't be frightened about sharing the load, because therefore you're sharing the journey as well. And we've always believed in that, putting the team together, and at West Winds we certainly did that, and it made for such a great journey. It also made for some great heated arguments, some very robust discussions, and some late night boozy sort of chats. But get your team together and understand what your team needs and what those skills are in order to get to where you want to be in your 3, your 5, your 6 windows.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said there, from everything that I've learned and read and all kinds of things. So if you're listening at home, re-listen to that, because there is a lot of really important content there. Jez, did you have a mentor on your journey? Someone that you learned from?
I've had a couple of mentors. I would probably be still skulking around the streets of Perth if it wasn't for my first food and beverage director, my first general manager, who gave me an opportunity to study hospitality, food and beverage management, I'd probably shout out to Luke Brennan and Matt Hurley and Bridget LeGrove, the three people that really shaped me at the time. When I was at Brown Forman, I had a couple of mentors as well. My state sales manager gave me some really good creative license, I think. My field sales manager was good as well, but certainly Andy Bauer walked into a meeting full of sales reps and said, right, you've all got $5,000, get out of here. I said, well, what do we do with it? He said, whatever you want. I said, well, okay, so we're brand builders at Brown Forman, so obviously we've got to build brands. He said, yep, keep it legal, get a plan together, and make sure we quantify results. So we evaluate. There's a bunch of buzzwords you can stick over the top: activate, strategize, evaluate.
It's all saying the same thing. Yeah.
Pretty much. But what he did was allow us to go back to the market with tailor-made solutions rather than, hey, and we've all seen it, certainly in booze, the rep that comes in with a box of flashing badges, glow-in-the-dark pens, and dicky hats, and it's a cocktail bar. A, you've failed to understand who the customer is, what the needs of their customers are, and B, you've just run by your business model, which is what marketing might have just said, here's 20 kits, go and do it. Instead, he said, go and do something cool, build the brand, be different, challenge the norm, and really understand what the customer's needs are and build something with them, including the relationship. I spent my $5,000 pretty quick, and I tiptoed back to him and said, mate, I've spent it. He said, great, you can have another 10. I said, wow, you sure? And he said, keep going. I said, all right, so I did. And it really changed some of the movements and the dynamic and the thinking in our business. Was not all customers are the same. Not all customers are made equal. And we need to be really agile, quick thinking. The market can change really quickly. Unfortunately, those big brands, for them to change, agility certainly isn't a word.
Yes.
It's like doing a U-turn in a shipping container. A container ship, that shit can take you 3 months, 6 months, 2 years to bring things to life. So it was really good that we had that freedom to really think quickly, and that put us ahead of the pack for a long time.
What's your biggest challenge right now?
Myself, market conditions, and the worst, not the worst, the toughest thing in any small business is cash flow. It's the insatiable beast. It's the monster that continues to require feeding. Even in the face of all manner of opportunity, you still need, in order to grow your business, to manage that cash cow monster.
Yes. So you've elaborated on cash flow. What about yourself and market conditions?
Look, market conditions, when we first started, there were 5 gins in Australia. I think 3 of them might have been afterthoughts by whiskey producers who had nothing to do for 4 years. And you don't want these sort of guys to be bored either, so power to them. Now there's 165 gins, so what does that mean? Well, you've got to come back with something a little different if you were to do something. Personally, I'm enjoying the beer space, but there are umpteen thousand breweries in Australia. So how do we stand out above the noise? How do I make myself stand out above the noise? So, you've got to constantly be listening, learning, understanding the market, listening to your customers. It becomes tiring, but it's still exciting for me. I still enjoy it, but it's about having those assets behind you in order to do the job. So is that sales support, understanding your customers and supplying solutions, but also supporting them and making sure you're building and reinvesting in their businesses, keeping yourself fit, active, healthy, and ahead of the curve, and understanding where we're going as an industry. And like I said, the market conditions, we've just got to know what's going on and seeing those trends. Don't be frightened to challenge them. Don't be frightened to set them. And also don't be frightened to follow them either. But it's always harder to lead than it is to follow.
What plans do you have for the industry, and how do you want to contribute?
Personally, I'd probably like to go and set up a yoga retreat, camping, cooking school and surf retreat at the back of Panama, and I think that'd be wonderful. It'd be a wonderful mentoring sort of role that we could go and do for people. Is that a reality at the moment? Probably not. Look, I'm working on a couple of small projects. I'm getting over to Uganda to help out with a great mate of mine, Mitch Horrocks, who's providing drinking water for the 663 million people. What does that mean, though, on a greater scale? Raising some interest and certainly some awareness for that. But also then, how do we sustain that? How do we build that? And using my skill sets and my learnings, why couldn't we do a brewery over there and build craft beer in Africa and employ more people, create more jobs, obviously, but also teach those skill sets and build brand Africa, brand Uganda, maybe a little bit in Zimbabwe. I think that sort of stuff, certainly something that's interesting me at the moment. Keeping an eye on some of the young folk as well. I think there's a lot of development in many industries. There's not enough in the front of house. We've always lived in the shadow of kitchens where, there are apprenticeships. There's a structured setup as to how you get ahead and how you get your ticket and how you're recognised. And Are you year 2, are you year 3? There's not a lot of that in the front of house. So I think that's a big frustration for a lot of people. So how do we do that?
Totally behind the first point you made there about helping Africa build as its own entity. I mean, it's massive, and it deserves to be a lot bigger than it is in the Western world. On that last note, though, when people have rules and systems around what they do, they tend to cling to them. If it means level 2, level 3, or year 2, year 3, then it also means that there's no flexibility in moving faster. People can't move more quickly because it becomes very regimented. Meritocracy disappears when you've got these systems. So how would more training and more formalized systems in front of house cope with that sort of issue?
I think meritocracy doesn't necessarily have to disappear. I think if you're ahead of your class in a certain area, then you are moved ahead faster. I mean, I'm terrible at maths and I'm terrible at science, but I was always advanced English, and I went up a couple of grades in my English and my history because I really enjoyed it. And I think we can certainly do the same in hospitality. If you're further advanced in certain aspects of front of house, then move them forward. I think we need to work more with the training systems. I think big companies are doing a great job. There's some really wonderful initiatives. I'd like to see more globalization on that. So sharing knowledge is that sort of swapping trade. So having people come over for a couple of weeks, like the chefs have been doing Stasi's for years. I'd like to see more of that because I know a lot of young bartenders here would love to go to New York or Berlin or Amsterdam, but maybe they don't know someone. Maybe they don't know what that first step looks like. And I certainly think opening our arms a lot more than what we do, and that's not to say we don't. I think for an industry that's notorious for being paid under $23 an hour, we're very open-armed and very welcoming, but I think there's a lot more that we can do with that. And I think it's begun a lot with the Brotherhood through Bookface, but people doing really good things with that platform. Guys like Fraser and Hannah, I think, with their global bartender community. I think there's a lot that's gone on there that could help.
Hannah's episode's coming up on the show at the time of recording here, but by this time the episode comes out, Hannah's episode will be out as well.
Listen to the lady, she speaks a lot of truth. I've got all the time in the world for the pair of them. I don't always understand what phrase says, but I know it's from a really good place, so I'll run with it. So look, I don't know what the answer is and how we can afford, as margins are increasingly battered around and, as we said, home delivered food keeps encroaching upon our profitability. How do we reinvest? How do we do that? How do we provide tangible, quantifiable structure for the next generation of front of house? I don't know. Fortunately, it's a very dynamic industry and there's some really cool trends and there's a lot of great older bartenders. And when I say older, anything over about 25, 26 who are really reaching out, sharing a lot of their information with the younger guys. I think it's a really beautiful area that we get into, that people are learning consistently. We're sharing knowledge rather than going, no, that's mine. You don't know about that because I'm not going to tell you. You and I spoke about it earlier about podcasts and, sharing information and getting big name bartenders on that have won a comp or maybe they've run a successful bar. And, that comes from the industry top downwards. But share those sort of things. And if one or two younger people can take something away, then I think power to them.
I want to ask you, Jez, what is the next step for Jez Spencer?
Portugal, 11 days, seafood, sunshine, and drinking all manner of cheap red wine. Beyond there, I'll have to do something creative because idle hands make devil's work. We've got a couple of projects in the mix, but I won't tell you what we're just about yet because there's enough people that talk shit in the world. I'd rather put my money where my mouth is when it's ready to go, but you'll be the first to know.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being on the show today, Jez. It's been great having you on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate your time.
Stay in touch with the show after hours at Hospopreneurs on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Creativity and innovation in hospitality. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson. Sound like tomorrow. Sweet as sound. What does tomorrow sound like? Let's show you.